and almost warm. I spent many years in Atlanta, Georgia. Until it gets 70 degrees, it's not warm outside. My wife would disagree with you, or with me on that. She likes the cold. But I'm glad you guys joined us today. We have some exciting things happening in our service today. The first thing is we have a special presentation, and I'm not making this presentation, so I'm going to ask the ladies who are going to help me with this presentation, go ahead and make your way up here, and I'll let you know more about that. One thing, as they're making their way up here, I want to remind you guys of a couple of things. One is this Wednesday, I know Pastor Crystal already touched on the meal that we're having. I started last Wednesday a Bible study on the Ten Commandments. For those of you who were here last Wednesday, you kind of got a little bit of insight into where we're headed with the study. But I want to encourage you, if you've ever wanted to really look at the Ten Commandments. Now we all know, don't kill anybody. That's pretty obvious. We're not to kill anybody. But there's more to it than just don't kill people. And so over the next 10 weeks, we're going to continue in this study. And I encourage you, if you're interested at all, join me this Wednesday and let's take a deep look at what the Ten Commandments not only meant to the Israelites, but what they mean to us today. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Carol, and we'll let her tell you all about what they're doing.
Excuse me. Hello, I'm Carol Cox from the Quilts of Valor Foundation, and we're here to present some quilts today. And I have Patty, that's a member, and Marilyn Offenbacher, Patty Rolfe, sorry, Marilyn Offenbacher and Jennifer Golden. And we have a group that's named Southwest Iowa Scrappy Quilters. And I would like to ask for these people or these veterans to come forward that I name off. And one of them is Bob Nicholas. And Bob, if you want, you can just stay right where you're at and we'll come back to you. Ron LaRock, Dean Burns, and Bob Nicholas, Jennifer Kelly, Joe Bergen, and Mickey Pope. If you'd just like to line up right here. Okay, I have something to read to you guys first. We'd like to thank you for your service. On behalf of the Quilts of Valor Foundation and the Shenandoah American Legion Auxiliary Group, Unit 88, in recognition of your service and sacrifice for this nation, it is a privilege to serve, honor, and comfort you through the award of this Quilt of Valor. Though we may never know the depth of your sacrifice to protect and defend the United States of America, as a gesture of gratitude from a grateful nation, we award you this Quilt of Valor. And Dean's the first one, it looks like. So we make scrappy quilts, and they're all patriotic colors, so we don't waste any of our material. Dean Burns. And then, so we have a quilt, and then when you're not using them, we don't want you to store them in a trash bag. So we have a presentation case is what they call it, or it's a pillowcase. So you can do whatever you want. And we want you to use these. We don't want you just to display them or whatever. They're made to be used, and we hope you enjoy your quilt. And the first one is Dean Burns. And he was in the Air Force, 1982 to 1992. Thank you, Dean.
It's going to take a while.
Okay. Who do we have?
Yeah.
Ron LeBrock. Ron? Yeah, you guys want to take it up there and then just show it. I'll take that. Okay, the next one is, where's his tag at? There's a label on each one of these, too. And it says all of their service, and if they've given us, like any medals or honors, those are on this label, too. Ron was a branch of the Navy, 1974 to 1977. Vietnam. Yeah, you can scoot down. I'll just say this one. Okay. See, who do we have next? Jennifer Kelly. No. Okay, the next one we have is Jennifer Kelly, Branch Army. She served from 1997 to 2005.
Oh, she served a while. 8 years, that's...
Okay. Who's the next one we have? Mike. They said it's Mickey. Yeah. And then the next one is him. Then Bob is back there. Okay, the next one is Mike or Mickey, it says. He's in the... Mikey. Mikey, sorry about that. Navy. And he served 1985 to 1987. Reagan peacetime. Wrap him with it. Yeah. That's Bob's. We'll take that to him back there. Yeah. Okay, and we've got Joe Bergen, and he was in the Army, and we don't have a year you served, but that's okay. We just used the information we had, and thank you for your service. Yeah, thank you. And we'll want to get a picture of you. We got to go back and get Bob. Let me read his. Okay. Okay, Bob Nicholas, Branch Army, Vietnam, 1965 to 1967. Thank you, Bob. Here, let's turn. We do have some that are panels. We got to turn it this way. Now, if you want to stay up there, we might want to get a picture of you guys, okay? Just for a second. How's that, Bob? I thought you liked that one.
Thank you very much.
We'll get too hot real quick. Congratulations, Bob. That's your, you can put on his walker. That's your presentation case.
That's the case.
It's like a pillowcase, but if you want to store it in there, you can.
Thank you.
Marilyn, remember from high school?
Yep.
Yeah.
All service.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you have a bulletin? A bulletin? Do you have a bulletin? A bulletin. Thank you very much, Carol, and the Quilt of Valor Foundation for your presentation and your gift. We owe those who serve a lot, and I thank you very much for your service. And I know that there are others who have served did not get a presentation. Maybe it's because I know of at least one who had already received a blanket. And I know there are a couple others probably that weren't here when we filled out all the paperwork. But, you know, there's something amazing. Yes? A quilt. My bad. Quilt. Now, if you hear anybody snoring, it's probably one of those with a quilt. So just, throw something at them.
I did have one thing. If we did miss somebody, just let Chris know, and we can get it taken care of, get a form, and get it filled out. Or if you know somebody, you can just get a hold of us, and
Okay.
she's got some information, and we can get you guys quotes. Or maybe you got grandparents.
So if you know somebody, if you or you know somebody who has served and has not received a quilt, just call the office, let me know, and we'll get one. We'll get all the information to you so we can get you a quilt. God is good. If you have a bulletin, go ahead and look at it real quick. These are new bulletins. We kind of went with something a little different. On the bottom section of the bulletin, you'll notice that it is perforated. And here's why we did that, because we want to make it as easy as possible for you to share with us prayer requests or praise reports. Just on the back side, write whatever that is, rip it off, and you could either, we've already taken up the offering, so you can't put it in the offering plate. But if you give it to me or one of the ushers, we'll make sure that we get those. We have a prayer ministry that prays. They're going to get this information, and they're going to be praying for your need. If you're a visitor with us and you have not filled out one of those, on the front side of the bulletin, there is a Connect card. So if you're a visitor with us and you have not filled out a Connect card, we would love to have a record of your visit. I will send you a letter. That's about it. I'm not going to bombard you with a bunch of information that you might not want. If you want more information about what we're doing around here, I'll be happy to share with you as much information as I can. You'll eventually get to where you just tell me to shut up and let me live my life. Have you ever had a weird thing happen to you? Nobody? Am I the only one that has weird things happen? Can we go ahead and turn the lights up? I can't see who I'm talking to.
My name is Sheila.
Oh, turn it back down. Turn it back down. I'm just kidding. Yeah, Sheila, the one who just blurted out, she's the one that parked crooked. She parked crooked over the line. Those are brand new lines out there. And we are so used to not having lines, we just park anywhere. I would park in the first spot to the left of the doors because that was handicap, but you couldn't see the handicap sparking on the ground. And the handicap sign, somebody had plowed over. And so everybody around here knew that was for handicap parking, except for me. And so I parked there all the time. And now I can't park there because they painted and they put the sign back up. That's okay. So, weird thing happened to me on Friday. And Friday is a day, the first thing I do every Friday morning is go have breakfast with Eli, my little boy, my 3-year-old. We go down to McDonald's, and we order the same thing. Him and I, we're torn from the same cloth because we both like routine. And so we went, and he's excited on Friday mornings to go to McDonald's and eat. So we go to McDonald's and eat like we normally do, and got done eating, went home. He likes to watch a little bit of TV, and he's at the age now where he knows what he wants to watch, but he cannot articulate words correctly. So you have to decipher what he's trying to say he wants to watch. And I rarely get it right. Because I'll pull something up on the TV and he'll go, no, 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 Daddy. No, 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 no. And he'll say it again. Like I understood at that time. He watches a little bit of TV. Well, we had to do some errands. So we got out in a car. And my wife has a Honda Pilot. We love our Honda Pilot, but it's having issues. So we took it in to get it fixed. And so we have a loaner car. And I'm driving this loaner car around, and I get over to an intersection over here. Don't know the street names, which is just unlike me. I usually know all the street names. We stop at the stop sign right there, and there was another car there. It was a white little sedan, older one, and he pulls in front of me, which was his turn, so I didn't think anything of it. And I go in and I go right behind him, and then he pulls over to the side of the road. Again, people do that. I didn't think anything of it. So I just pass right on, and then he pulls in behind me. Again, that's not too unusual. So I get over to here, and I turn left in front of the church, and I was actually just pulling over to make a phone call. I wasn't going to get out of the car. I wasn't going to come inside. I was just pulling over to make a phone call. Now, the handicap signs are still sitting there, but I don't pull straight in. I park parallel. I parallel with the sidewalk, and this guy turns behind me and keeps going. And I'm not thinking anything of it. I'm just minding my own business. I'm about to make a phone call. And then I see him get to the end of the road and do a 3-point turnaround. Now I'm starting to get curious. Because first he pulled over, and I got in front of him. Then he turned down the same street I was. Then he decides he wants to turn around. So he comes back, and he stops, no lie, right next to my car. And he pulls up his phone. Now, what do you do? What do you think? What do you think when somebody pulls up next to you and pulls up their phone and holds it like this? They're taking a picture, right? Yeah. Holds the phone up, setting it down, takes off. Is that not strange? Does anybody else think that is just weird? If I had been probably 20 years younger, I would have said, the guy's a moron, and went about my business. I'm not 20 years younger. So you know what I did? Whipped it around. Oh yeah, whipped it around. You go down this road, there's a yield sign, right? And he stopped at the yield sign. And like a good father, I went as fast as I could to catch up with him. I just got the ends right up, and I didn't pull up behind him. I broke the law. I went into the oncoming lane to pull up next to him. You know what that is, right? Okay. No, it's not my blinker. And he rolled his window down too. Oh, I didn't think he was going to. So I just asked him, I says, hey, is there a particular reason why you took a picture of us back there? You know what his response was? I didn't take your picture. Smile, just kidding. All right, so, and he said it quickly, and then he rolled his window up, and he turned left and started driving down the road. No, I didn't follow him. I was going to catch up with him and hold my phone up as I was passing him. I was going to catch up with him and take a picture of his license plate. Then I thought to myself, and you know how fast you start thinking in situations. I mean, you talk about it, and it seems like it takes forever, but when it only took a couple of seconds for all of these things to transpire. And I just said, you know what? Let him go. And I've told this story to several people. Some people say, well, he was taking a picture of the front of the church. No, he wasn't. Listen, he was like right next to me. Okay? He was taking pictures of the car. Tinted windows in the back seat, so he really couldn't see Eli. Maybe he really liked that loaner car that we have, and he wanted a picture of that loaner car, but I can't imagine getting a very good picture sitting right next to somebody. So my only thought is, I must have offended him somehow. And I don't know what it was. Was I following too close? He turned before I did, so I couldn't have cut in front of him. I don't know. People do weird things. And here's the thing, you just don't know why sometimes people do those things. There had to have been something that he saw that I did or didn't do that caused him to want to take my picture. I'm not that good looking, okay, that people just randomly go around taking my picture. There's something that he saw that caused him to take my picture. You know, we do a lot of things based on what we see. In fact, most of what we do, most of the decisions we make are based on what you see. You see a car accident, what do? Hopefully you do more than just wave. Does anybody call 911? Make sure, I don't want any of you guys driving by when I have an accident. You call 911. There's an accident, you call 911. What about if you see your kid doing something they're not supposed to do? You guys are awful quiet this morning, aren't you? You tell them not to do that. What if you see somebody about to get hurt or doing something you don't think that they could actually do? You go and help them. All of these things you do because you see something and you take action based on what you see. We do it all of the time. Most of the time, we do it unconsciously. Not unconsciously. We do it without really thinking about it. It's just a natural result of the way we have been raised or trained. Okay? That's how we see something and we do something about it. We all do it. And then there are times where we see things and we don't do anything about it. We see something and we know it's wrong, and yet we don't do anything about it. Take abortion, for instance. I have a very strong stance on abortion. Abortion's wrong, period. Some people will even disagree if I say abortion is wrong even in the case of rape. There are some Christians who will say, well, in that case, it's not. It's okay to have abortion if it's a case. Or incest. It's okay to have an abortion if it's the case of incest. You know what you're doing? You're blaming the child for somebody else's sin. I have known a couple of, in my lifetime, a couple of people who were children as a result of rape. I haven't known very many, but I've known a couple of them. And what I have realized is they could live very productive, very godly lives, even though it was an atrocity that brought them to this world. We know it's wrong. We know it. We know it in the depth of our heart that abortion is wrong. And we see it happening, but does it move us to do something about it? You know what irritates me more than anything? I say more than anything. When we're dealing with abortion, is Christians who will go and they will spend hours picketing an abortion clinic, but not spend 2 minutes in prayer. You want to do something that's going to change, it's going to make an impact? Picketing an abortion clinic has very little effect. Research shows that most of the people who go into an abortion clinic, it is not the picketers or the people protesting that changes whether they want to keep their child or not. The majority of the time, it's an influence of somebody they know. It's an influence of somebody you know. I'm not saying that people should not picket abortion clinics. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying is, if you're going to do that, you better back it up with prayer. Otherwise, it's not going to do you any good. You know what it is? It's you saying, I'm right. But when you back it up with prayer, it can actually have an impact. And you're saying, this is what God says is right. And there's a big difference. What we see and how we respond dictates who we are. Jesus, today is Palm Sunday. You guys, I love Palm Sunday. I had thought about, very briefly, about getting big palm branches and waving them up in the air. You know, it's kind of cool to do that a little bit, but then we'd have palm branches all over the place and it'd be a mess. And I thought, you know what, let's do that next week before service instead of during service. Maybe we'll hand them out as people are coming in, and then we'll take them away once they sit down. Palm Sunday is the Sunday that Jesus made what we call his triumphal entry into Jerusalem. And I want to read the story of that in John's telling, John chapter 12. We're going to be reading verses 12 through 19 of John 12. Here's how John says it. The next day, the great crowd that had come for the festival heard that Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem. They took palm branches and went out to meet him, shouting, Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the King of Israel. Jesus found a young donkey and sat on it, as it is written, do not be afraid, daughter Zion. See, your king is coming, seated on a donkey's colt. At first, his disciples did not understand all of this. Only after Jesus was glorified did they realize that these things had been written about him and that these things had been done to him. Now the crowd that was with him, when he called Lazarus from the tomb and raised him from the dead, continued to spread the word. Many people, because they had heard that he had performed this sign, went out to meet him. That gives us motivation as to why these people were there. These people either saw or heard that Jesus had raised Lazarus from the dead. No small feat. So they came out to meet him. Verse 19. So the Pharisees said to one another, see, this is getting us nowhere. Look how the whole world has gone after him. Sometimes we perceive things wrong. If there's one thing that you probably have learned if you've been coming to this church over the last 6 months, something you have learned, is that the way we read Scripture and how we read Scripture, we often are wrong. Now, there was a big crowd. There was a big crowd there. There was a lot of people because it was Passover. There was a feast, and people came. In fact, that was when I was doing research for this study. The Passover lamb that was to be sacrificed and eaten in the Passover, when they had this celebration, historians would say, Josephus specifically, said that there were somewhere around 280,000 lambs sacrificed at Passover during Jesus' day. So there was, with that many lambs being sacrificed, just imagine how many people were there. So we see this crowd, and sometimes we might get the idea that all of the people in Jerusalem were standing by watching Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem. Well, first of all, that's just logistically impossible. You just could not fit everybody who was there for the Passover in this one road that Jesus was going to be walking down. Now, we had a crowd. There was a crowd. But this crowd, you have to understand, was a very specific crowd. It was those who heard or saw that Lazarus was raised from the dead by Jesus. Knowing that that's why they were there gives you some indication as to what they were expecting. We have the benefit of 2,000 years of looking back as to why Jesus was there. We even have the post-resurrection and being able to study what Jesus said before and after his resurrection to get an idea of why Jesus was there. He was there to save mankind spiritually. But is that what this crowd was there for? Were they expecting some spiritual revelation from Jesus? Remember who these people were. These were Jews. These people believed that they were the children of God. They were God's holy people. They believed they were already spiritually free. So if they believed they were spiritually free, why were they there? What were they looking for? They were looking for the Messiah. The Messiah. And while we are looking for something different out of the Messiah, these people were looking for freedom. Not spiritual freedom. Not spiritual freedom. They were looking for physical freedom. You have to remember, the Jews were in a country that was occupied by the Romans. And the Romans had severe taxes that would put upon them and laws that just didn't seem fair. You take this nation of Israel, once the most dominant nation in the area. God had expanded the territory of the children of Israel. And now they're infiltrated by the Romans, having to, instead of making their own decisions, having to live by the decisions of others. So when these people standing on the side of the road, waving these palm branches and shouting, Hosanna, it wasn't about this Savior who's going to come and take away their sins. It was about something completely different. When Jesus was walking down that road, what did he see? Remember I told you what we see often dictates what we do? What did he see? What was it that Jesus saw? Last year we talked about Jesus came. Today we're going to talk about Jesus saw. And next week on Easter, we're going to be talking about he conquered. He came, he saw, he conquered. So what did he see? First thing he saw is he saw people who were in desperate need. People who were in desperate need. These people needed freedom. But not the freedom that they were thinking. Not the freedom of some physical oppression that they're under. He was there to give them freedom of heart, freedom of mind, an eternity that they can spend with God. See, they thought they were okay because they were making their regular sacrifices. They thought that they were okay because they had the right blood in their veins. But in reality, for most of them, it was just a way of life. That's just what they did because they were taught by their parents that's what we need to do. Because they were told by their grandparents that is how it's always been done. Instead, Jesus came to give them something completely different than what the crowd was looking for. Hosanna is a word of praise. But you know what it actually means? It actually can be summed up in either "oh, save" or "save us." And they yelled out Hosanna because they believed Jesus was coming to save them. Now we know that he did come to save them, but not in the sense that they believed. They thought Jesus was going to come because the Messiah was foretold to come and be a king. So they saw Jesus as this man who was going to come and liberate them from the oppression of the Romans. He was going to come and he was going to take all of their physical problems and do away with them. That is why they were singing Hosanna. Save us from this oppression that we were facing. Save us from this difficulty that the Romans had put on us. Save us. And then what else did it read? It says, Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, talking about the Messiah coming in the name of God. Blessed is the King of Israel. They were looking for an earthly king, not unlike the kings they had in the past, who would fight for them and who would bring victory for them on earth. But he had different plans. We look back and we think, well, yeah, of course he had a better way. Of course, being spiritually free, saving the spiritual destitute is a better way. They should have known better. But before we give the Jews a hard time, ask yourself, do we sometimes expect God to bring freedom in things that are physical, that are part of this physical world? And ask ourselves, is that exactly the most important thing in Jesus' life, or in Jesus' death, was to keep you from being in debt, to keep you from getting sick, to keep you from having difficulties in your relationship? Was that all that Jesus came to do, is to make our lives comfortable? I don't ever remember reading in the Bible anywhere where Jesus is saying, come after me and I will make your life easy. He made a lot of promises, but having an easy life was not one of them. He saw people who were destitute who were in desperate need, and that wasn't just the Jews of his day. I really think that when he's walking, when he's making his triumphant entry into Jerusalem on the back of that donkey, and I've never ridden a donkey, but I can't imagine it being very comfortable. Has anybody ever ridden it? Got a couple people who've ridden it? God bless you. I rode a horse once without a saddle. Never again. He rides this donkey. This should have first given the Jews an idea. What kind of warrior rides on a donkey? A donkey was a businessman's choice of transportation. If you were going to be bringing a new kingdom, if you were going to be a victorious king, you would be riding on a big horse. You would be riding maybe with 1,000 men with you. You wouldn't be riding on a donkey with 12 men who look like they just woke up in a barn following you. When he's riding into this city and he's seeing these people, he's not just seeing the Jews who need deliverance from their what they think is their greatest oppression. But he sees people in the 2nd century, and the 9th century, the 12th century, and even the 21st century. He sees us as he's riding into town. He sees us, and we're in desperate need. Anybody who believes that they are not in desperate need doesn't understand their relationship with God. Once you come to the idea that you are no longer in need, then you no longer need Jesus. You no longer need somebody to help you. That is why it is hard for a rich man to get into the kingdom of heaven. Why? Because the rich man has all of his needs taken care of. What does he need God for? What does he need Jesus for? He has everything he needs. We have to, I'm not saying that you have to live a life of desperation. But you have to realize that once you get to a point where you think you no longer need Jesus, you've come to a very dangerous place. We are all in desperate need. First and foremost, in desperate need for the salvation, the spiritual salvation that Jesus brings. But even more than that, we do have physical needs. We do. I talk with people on a regular basis who are struggling with cancer. I have family members who are struggling and fighting cancer. And while they still rely on Jesus for their salvation, they're still in desperate need physically. Relationally. I had 2 people that I talked to this past week about relationships and how there just seems to be no resolution. Even if those relationships, both members of those relationships are believers and know who Jesus is, but because of their lack of seeing eye to eye, sometimes it causes. Are you in a relationship and you don't see an answer? You're in desperate need, aren't you? You lose a job and you don't know where your next paycheck's coming from. You're in desperate need. The flood has devastated people's lives. They're in desperate need. So what do? How do you respond? You see these things, and it would be easy for us to say, Jesus bless them, and then go about our own business. And while I do believe we should pray for these people, if we see something and we have the ability to do something about it, and God is telling us to do something about it, and we do nothing about it, we're sinning. We're dismissing the Word of God for convenience sake. We all need Jesus to do something in our lives. We need to make sure that we don't allow the enemy to get a foothold in our life. The Jews, when Jesus was coming in, they thought he was going to be their Messiah king who would bring freedom to their land, would remove the opposition in the land that God had promised them a long time ago. And we think, well, yeah, but we don't have that problem. We do have that problem. It's just not in the land you're living in. It's not in the land you're walking in. It's in the life you're walking in. And we often allow the devil footholds in our life because we are not giving God what he needs in our life. Foothold is a dangerous thing. When somebody has a foothold, it's hard. It is hard to get them off. When somebody has a stronghold in our lives, it is hard to cause them to release that. And Satan does this in our lives. He did it with the land that the Jews were in, and he does it with our lives. He has things in our lives, areas in our lives that he is trying to get a foothold. Because if he knows if he could just get a foothold, he could take more ground. And for everybody, it's going to be different. For some people, the enemy tries to get a foothold in our workplace. He tries to get a foothold in our workplace by causing us to be maybe just a little dishonest, or maybe hold a little bit of resent because of our coworkers or our boss. Just a little bit. That's all he needs is a little bit because of our attitude or our work ethic. Maybe he's trying to get a foothold at school. We have teenagers here. Maybe Satan's wanting to get a foothold at your school, causing you to maybe, if I share my answers, it's not that big of a deal. Or if I cheat, it's not that big of a deal. If I lie about this or that, it's not that big of a deal. The foothold is the first step to an invasion. And we cannot allow that to happen in our lives. Maybe it's in a relationship. You are doing things in a relationship that God says is displeasing. Or maybe it's an attitude you have in a relationship that God says is displeasing. Maybe it's you're allowing the enemy a foothold in your home. Sometimes the only thing that we have to do to allow the enemy a foothold in our lives is absolutely nothing. Sometimes we don't have to do anything at all, and it allows the enemy a foothold in our homes. Maybe we allow footholds in our time. Maybe we're not very good and where we spend our time. Maybe it's our finances. Maybe you're struggling with your finances, and instead of being faithful to what God says, you're going to do it your own way because you know better than God. I think everybody has said that at least once in their lives. Oh, I know better than God. We may not think that, but we do it by our actions. We're letting Satan get a foothold in our finances. But what it really comes down to is allowing Satan a foothold in our minds. We allow him to manipulate what we see. And when what we see is manipulated, then how we respond to what we see is also manipulated. When Jesus was entering into Jerusalem, he didn't see people, rephrase it, he didn't only see people who were under an oppression by the government. He saw something greater than that. He saw people who were under oppression by a spiritual force that they could not free themselves from. If you read church history, you'll know that 60 years later or so, not even 60 years later, 25 years later, in 70 AD, there's an uprising. And because of that Jewish uprising, the temple is torn down. This was the place of God where they worshiped God, and it was torn down. We can fight physically, and we even can be victorious physically. But we will never be victorious spiritually in our lives if we don't let Jesus fight for us. Ephesians chapter 6, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but spiritual forces in the heavenly realm. That's why it's so important that we get on our knees and we pray. Now we need to do more than just pray, but we have to start with prayer. We have to start with prayer. We have to be praying for our workplace. We have to be praying for our relationships. We have to be praying for our finances. We have to be praying for our minds, that our minds would be renewed daily. Because it's so easy in the world we live in to let Satan just get a little tiny foothold in our lives, in our minds, and tear us down. Jesus, when he was riding down that road into Jerusalem, he saw people who were in desperate need, but he also saw people who didn't know what was best for themselves. If you're a parent, you understand this. If you ever babysat a little kid, you understand this. One of my favorite illustrations, and when I'm talking with teenagers, when I was a youth pastor and I was talking with teenagers, I always use this illustration because it really helped them understand what a parent goes through and why a parent sometimes says what they say. But it also helps us as adults understand God's perspective. Because the same way as an adult, you see a 3-year-old and you want to keep that 3-year-old safe so you don't let them do some of the things that they want to do, God sees things in our lives that are dangerous and doesn't want us to do those. Why? Because he doesn't want us to have any fun? I have a 3-year-old, and I guarantee you that if I let him, he would go and play in that road every minute of every day, because that's what he likes to do. That's what little kids like to do. They like to run out in the middle of the road. And why don't we let them run out in the middle of the road? Because we're trying to keep them from having fun. What terrible people you are from keeping your kids from having fun by playing in the road. No. We know it's dangerous. It could cause death. When Jesus is telling us, pray for your enemies, when he is telling us to love your neighbor as yourself, when he is telling us to give generously, he's not doing it because he wants to take the fun out of your life. He's doing it because he knows the dangers when we don't listen to him. He doesn't want us playing in the road that could cause death. There's a group of people that are there when Jesus enters into Jerusalem. And it's verse 19 of our passage. And here's what it says. It says, "So the Pharisees said to one another, 'See, this is getting us nowhere. Look how the whole world has gone after him.'" So here's what we got. We have all of these Jews who are looking for this king to come and deliver them from oppression, when really he was coming to deliver them from spiritual oppression. And we have these Pharisees. These Pharisees, have you ever met, somebody, and we probably all know somebody like this, who is really, really, really smart? I'm not a very smart guy, to be honest with you. The only reason I sound smart is because I do a lot of research. But I have a cousin who's really, really smart. And here's what I've noticed about people who are really, really smart. They let you know that they're really, really smart. Come on, you know. We all know them. They don't come out and say, "I am really, really smart." But they usually have an answer for everything. And most of them, they like to share it with you because they're going to point out all of your faults and how to correct them. That's kind of the idea behind it, the idea you get behind these Pharisees. Okay, these Pharisees were pretty smart. They had spent years and years of studying. In fact, most of them, if they wanted to become a teacher, and this got me when I read this, it just blew my mind. And I've known this for a while, but if you wanted to be a teacher in Jesus' day, a religious teacher, you had to have the law. Now, I'm not talking about the Ten Commandments. I'm talking about the first 5 books of the Old Testament: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, what they call the Torah. They had to have that memorized, all 5 books, by the time they were 12. Anybody have, we'll go with 2 chapters of any of the first 5 books. Any of them have any of those memorized? No. So to say they were elite, sure. They believed they had all of the answers. They believed that they knew exactly what everything meant. There's another group of people that we have, that we face, that we hear about, that we read about in today's world. Muslims. Now, I'm not just talking about Muslims who are fanatics. Okay, if you're not aware, just like there are Christians who are fanatics and Christians who live out their daily lives by what they believe, and then there are Christians who are hypocritical at best. You have Muslims that fall into those same categories too. And for Muslims, it is grained in their head from the time they are born what to believe. And it is grained in their heads from the time they are born what to do. And so when they get older, they know what to believe and they know what to do. But that doesn't make them right. The Pharisees, they knew what to believe and they knew what to do, but they were misguided. They thought they knew what was best for themselves, but what they believed was false. We criticize people for their false beliefs, but what is even worse is when we know the truth and we still don't follow it. We know that Jesus came to save the world, and that it is our responsibility to go out and share his love. When was the last time, and this is for your reflection, when was the last time you actually told somebody about what Jesus had done for them? Yeah, but Pastor Steve, you don't understand. You're right. I don't understand, but Jesus knows. Okay, let's make it even a little bit easier than that. Let's not even talk about telling somebody that Jesus came to save their life. When was the last time you just told somebody, and I'm not talking about your Christian friends, I'm talking about you wanting to kind of spread the gospel. You told somebody about the good things God has done in your life. I remember when I was early on in youth ministry, I used to make this statement that salvation is free. And while I do not take it back, it is true. Salvation is free. It is not. All you have to do is freely accept it. But living your life for Jesus the way he desires is going to cost you everything. You want to be an impact into people's lives? It doesn't happen by accident. You have to make a conscious decision that you're going to do this. I remember reading a book on evangelism. Did you know 85% of the people who come to church not by flyers they see at the store, not by telemarketers that call them up and say, hey, we're having a special event at church, you need to come. Not by a Facebook page that says, hey, this is going to be cool. 85% come, who don't normally go to church, come to church by a face-to-face invitation. 85% who come to church do so because of a face-to-face invitation. When was the last time you went up to somebody who doesn't go to church? Hey, man, we're having church on Sunday. Why don't you come with me? I tell you what, if you come with me, I will buy you lunch afterwards. Bribery, it always works. Next week is Easter, and we want you to invite as many people as you can, and we're gonna help you out with that a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and ask a couple of ushers if they will go ahead to these back doors. We're about to close. They go ahead to these back doors. There are cards that are about this big around. They're not round. If you pick up a round card, it's the wrong one. They're about rectangle, about like this size. And they just give information about our service next week. I want everybody to take 3 or 4 cards. Take 3 or 4 cards with you, and I want you to go face-to-face and personally invite somebody. Maybe you go and invite that neighbor that lives next door that you don't like. Or maybe you go to that neighbor that doesn't like you. Maybe you invite somebody that you work with. Maybe you invite somebody that you go to school with or that you see frequently, but They just need to be invited. Listen, it didn't do any good to have the greatest information in the whole wide world, the greatest story in the whole wide world, and keep it to yourself. Sometimes we don't see what's best for ourselves. When Jesus tells us that we need to do something, we can make excuses. We can say why it won't work. But sometimes we just need to take what he says and have faith that it's right. And just do it. Listen, I can give you as many tools as possible. I can tell you how to do something. I can give you, but unless you go out and unless you do it, it's not going to happen. Jesus came to save the world. And as I said last week, if you were the only person to ever receive Jesus, he would have died for you. That's how much he loves you. That's also how much he loves everybody else in this world. He cares about your needs. He cares about their needs. He cares about your heart. He cares about their heart. And the moment we allow ourselves to go callous, we start letting the enemy get a foothold in our life. Anybody stand up with me? I'm going to close in prayer. Well, I do believe Jesus' biggest priority and our biggest priority is the salvation of mankind. He also cares about the little things in our lives. And I know I said the most important thing isn't the physical situation we find ourselves in. He understands the things that hurt our heart. He understands the things that cause us pain. And I'm not trying to make light of those things. Those things are important to him. He had compassion when he saw people hurting, when he walked this earth. He had compassion when he saw injustice. And he does the same thing with us today. He has compassion for us when we are treated wrong. He has compassion when we are suffering. And he wants to meet you where you're at. He wants to touch you where you're at. He wants to not necessarily take all of your pain away, but he wants to walk you through it. All you have to do is reach up and grab his hand. All you have to do is reach up and grab his hand and say, Jesus, I want to walk with you. Not, Jesus, I want you to walk with me. We're good at that. We're good at, Jesus, come walk with me. But Jesus, I want to walk with you. And follow his leading. And you will find that he will heal some of those pains. You will find that he will mend some of those relationships. You will find that he will reconcile things in our lives that we saw no hope in. If that's you, if you have a need, first and foremost a spiritual need, but if you have a physical need, Jesus desires to walk with you. So as we close in prayer, You want Jesus to take you by the hand, and you want to walk with him through the difficulties, through the devastation, through the pain. I want you to just raise one hand up. Reach up to Jesus. Grab a hold of his hand and pray with me. Jesus, we thank you so much for the love that you have for us. We thank you for dying on the cross. You see our need. You see our desperation. Much, much, much greater than we could. We are facing things, sometimes things we just don't know why or how they happened. But you desire to walk us through. You desire to give us hope. You desire to bring us through. Not in our strength, not in our power, but in yours. Not in our peace, but in yours. Not in our wisdom, but in yours. Grab a hold of our hand, Jesus, and walk us through this. When we go to stumble, lift us up. When we can't see where our footing goes, guide us. When we see no end in sight, reassure us that you will not let go of us. We love you and we thank you. Go with us, we ask in your name. Amen. Amen. Thank you. Go with God. Look forward to next week. Make sure you get some of those invitations on your way out. Start handing them out, because I want to see God do some amazing thing and change people's lives next week. We will see you then.